You've just met the shifter and the bothy. You survived a scratch, but there's absolutely no way that you'll be able to survive its jaws clamped around your jugular and ripping out your throat. It just needs to run you down. It's got your scent. It's bigger than you, stronger than you, smarter than you, and as it manages to force you into the abandoned copper mine, you know that there's nowhere left to run. Hunter, are you about to end your career as dog chow? Nope, because you're not even around that corner, and what it leaps onto instead is a dead pig covered in a pint of your blood donated to the local doctor's office and stuffed with a bunch of silver nails and Semtex.
What the fuck?
The witch has put a spell on you. He's running his finger through your mind and memories. He's smiling at you as he takes his time crossing the courtyard of the abandoned kirk, the silvery glint of a scalpel in his right hand illuminated by the moonlight. He's killed 19 people. He's going to make 20 tonight, and he's going to take his time doing it. Hunter, are you about to end your story as a beating heart in a jar, weighing down the papers on some psycho wizard's desk? Nope, because unbeknownst to him and to you, you've got a Selly literally camping in the bell tower with an Enfield painting a red dot on his soon-to-be non-existent forehead. It was a close fight, but you did it. You managed to subdue the blank body. You've cut off its arms and legs with a fire axe. You've stoved in its teeth with a lead pipe. You've riddled it with crossbow bolts, staked it, and dragged it into the middle of a field to wait until dawn. But oh no, what's this? It's still fucking twitching! Isn't it about to get up for phase 2? Hunter, are you about to end your days like the rest of its victims, an exsanguinated husk in the woods getting picked at by the crows? No, because you remember to bring the Hunter Special. A stainless steel 1 litre flask filled with a 50-50 mixture of kerosene and rubbing alcohol. Ah! Hello, I'm the director of the Society for the Exploration of the Glasgow Underground, and this is the Hunter Survival Guide. Today's lesson is on what must be done, the doing it and the covering up whodunit, and is brought to you by the word trace evidence. So at this stage of the hunt, you've hopefully left no stones unturned. You've eliminated any doubts as to a non-supernatural explanation to a given situation. Does that mean you're ready to go in guns blazing? Absolutely not. You need a plan. And in the hunter community, that plan is usually referred to as an unusual threat response, or UTR for short. A term we borrow from the diverse cadre of unredeemable, nay-user, jackbooted narc bastards that work for the authorities. Those bastards tend to use the term UTR as a byword for the hunt in general, but real hunters, real, actual hunters, have adopted the term UTR as a byword for the boxing the quarry in and giving them the what for stage of the hunt. The unusual threat response isn't a detailed linear script for ending the quarry's rampage through your neighbourhood wherein your cell stands triumphantly over the remains and walks off cinematically into the sunset. The unusual threat response is what your cell does when the quarry takes that script, rips it apart, burns it, pisses on the ashes, blends it into a milkshake with your own tears and then feeds it to you. No, don't cut that. I absolutely guarantee you that will happen. You know when you're watching a horror movie and you see the armed to the teeth goon squad walk into the very clearly haunted and supernaturally present building and then get slaughtered to a man so the audience understands that guns don't solve every problem? This is what we're trying to avoid! As some famous Prussian general once said, no plan survives first contact with the enemy, so when your plan A fails, you need a plan B, a plan C, a plan X, and a cleanup plan. So we're going to take you through the process of planning a UTR from start to finish using a 100% fictional mock quarry as a template for future lessons. And the fictional quarry in this case? Tatty Neeps the Haggis Monster. Tatty Neeps is not real, he cannot hurt you. Tatty Neeps is a shape-shifting beastie who lives in the Kelvin Grove Museum. By day, he silently amuses tourists as an unassuming novelty exhibit in a natural history wing. By night, he transforms into an 8-foot-tall monster with a mouth like a car compactor and a hankering for organ meats of all varieties, most notably haggis, as in the delicious meat dish made of ground offal and oats and best served with turnips, potatoes, and, in my opinion, whiskey peppercorn sauce. This wouldn't be a major concern if not for the tiny problem that when he's otherwise deprived of Scotland's national dish, he tends to fly into a murderous rampage and start eating the livers of anything or anyone unfortunate enough to come across him. So a couple of missing hikers, an upturned sheep cart, and 3 broken into butcher shops later, he's usually on the Cell's radar. Tatty Neeps is not real, he cannot hurt you. The Cell is able to hobble together 2 stories of a large animal being spotted along the woods near the banks of the River Kelvin, and another story of a haggis delivery van being broken into late at night. And when searching for supernatural precedents, finds some old obscure myths of a rampaging beast of the Highlands that is said to eat the livers of rovers unless attacked with a blessed knife or otherwise placated by reciting poetry. Now, some of the Cell are rightfully sceptical about this blessed knife business, and even more so about the poetry, but rather than being dismissive, they decide it'd be best to try it anyway and cover all angles. And since a blessed knife is just as handy in a straight-up fight as an unblessed knife, and 3 of the Cell members repping the full Abrahamic gamut anyway, what's the harm? So they peel off to convince an imam, a priest, and a rabbi to walk into a coffee shop and have an interfaith discussion about knives. Meanwhile, the others set to filling up hiking backpacks with first aid supplies, flares, ammunition, all while learning as much rabbi burns as they can possibly cram into their heads before going through all of the butcher shops in the city and buying all the haggis. And the black pudding too, just in case. After locating the beastie's exit point from Kelvin Grove Museum, the Cell realises it's now 3 days till Burns Night, and if that beastie goes through a rampage all through Kelvinside, it could mean multiple fatalities. The clock is ticking. They opt for an ambush approach, and here we get to the UTR. Tatty Neeps is not real, he cannot hurt you. Plan A. They have a big pile of haggis in the middle of the dense woodlands near Kelvinside, where the hunters can lie in wait with bear traps, crossbows, and rifles in the event that they need to go loud. One Cell member sets up a blind so they can view the other side of the museum and check to see when Tatty exits and enters, keep an eye on his movements, and in the event that he for any reason deviates from the trail, Plan B. That Celly attempts to cut Tatty off and lure him away from any inhabited areas by turning themselves into bait, coating themselves in a handy bottle of pureed sheep liver that they kept for just this occasion. This volunteer should ideally be fleet-footed, have a strong stomach, and have balls of steel even if they are AFAB. The quarry is large, presumably capable of shoulder-charging a sheep cart. Tatty Neeps is not real, he cannot hurt you. So in the event that the forlorn hunter doesn't think that they can link up with the Cell before Tatty catches them, they lure them into the densest set of woods that they can, pull out their walkie-talkie, and Plan C. The Cell moves from ambush mode to skirmish mode, trying to coordinate and center on Tatty and the forlorn hunter at the potential risk of exposing themselves and their positions to bystanders or the authorities. Whether or not the Cell thinks they can make it there in time, or whether or not the Celly thinks that they can shake Tatty long enough to jump into the Kelvin and wipe off the sheep liver to cover their scent, determines whether that forlorn hunter will trigger Plan X. And Plan X is, try anything, because you're gonna die anyway and you might as well see if something can give the Cell an edge. Plan X is a solo melee confrontation, wherein the forlorn hunter tapes down the open channel of their walkie, pulls one of the blessed knives, charges Tatty, and starts screaming the address of the haggis at the top of their lungs. If it doesn't work, they're dead. But at least they can save enough time potentially for the Cell to rush in and try and finish it off. Holy shit, it's working! Their bows and knives see rustic labour dite and cut up Tatty with ready sleight, trenching its gushing entrails like a bright onny ditch, and then, oh what an awful sight, warm reeking rich. So we did it! The quarry's slain! The hunt's over! We can go home, right? Right? Wrong. Clean up. Dead quarry can pose just as many problems as living quarry. In Tatty's case, the Cell at large finds it suspicious that such an enormous beastie was able to crawl in and out of the Kelvin Grove Museum at night without anyone noticing, unless someone was letting him out deliberately. So, you've got a 400-pound haggis monster lying at your feet, and depending on how close to the road you were and how many gunshots went off, a limited number of time to clean up any evidence of this encounter. If you're pressed for time and keeping an ear out for sirens in the distance, take anything that might indicate human activity, weapons, traps, etc., and then burn the remains of the beastie before running. But if you've got time and you're close enough to the road and have a van, ropes, enough people to leverage it into the back of said van, it might be worth taking it with you. Not only does this make for a much less disturbing sight for the blue-collar road police that have come to investigate calls of gunshots and loud poetry being screamed in the woods, it also means that you can preserve the body to dump at another secondary location, keep it for future study, or possibly use it in trade. I know what you're thinking. That's a lot of effort to go to when you're shaking from adrenaline and still coated in a liver smoothie, but there's a reason why we include cleanup as part of a UTR. Remember our previous lesson. Mundane law enforcement use mundane tools to find mundane evidence to put mundane people into mundane jail. But supernaturals, particularly those that masquerade as humans to infiltrate our institutions, will take any evidence of your cell at a kill site, put two and two together, and then immediately hire wet workers to end your existence. The usual suspects do not operate on the same legal, moral, or psychological framework as humans do. Not because they don't try, but because they're literally incapable of it. And they certainly aren't going to forgo their perverse notions of justice because of the whole "he was going to literally eat me" excuse. Remember, these are the same creatures that consider us to be livestock, enemy combatants, cultists to exploit, flesh shoots to wear as they please. There is literally no justification that you can offer them wherein they're going to give you a pass for killing one of their kind, so we must extend to them the same lack of courtesy. In addition, depending on your quarry, cleanup can provide useful intelligence for your cell to utilize in future hunts, resources that your quarry may no longer have direct use of, and may even give you indication of where others of their ilk lie in wait. Blanks are known to use money and drugs to ensnare victims. Shifters certainly aren't above the use of firearms and explosives to deal with their own problems. And once you've gotten rid of the fettering wedding ring in the strongbox underneath the floorboards of that old abandoned house, the Spectre probably isn't going to mind if you hawk the rest of the jewellery for a quick quid. After all, you need to live and they don't. And that life, adjusting to the hunter lifestyle and all its caveats, is what we are going to cover in the next lesson. Till then, I'm the director. Please rewind before ejecting.
Tatty Names is not real, he cannot hurt you. Tatty Names is not real, he cannot hurt you. Tatty Names is not real, he cannot hurt you. Tatty Names is not...
This project and others like it were made possible by the generosity of my patrons on Patreon. Special thanks to my legendary and sandwich tier patrons, Jericho Spades, Griffin Provenzano, Devil, and Brandon Cryer. And an extra special thank you to all of my early backers, Ryan Henderson, Winter Slade, D Sparrow, Dugrin, Watchful Spirit, Harrison Pollen, Gunner, Computer Coder, Patchwork Wizard, Zeb Pickering Polstra, William Ferrari, Isaac Davies, Sashot Mack, Andrew Davis, Lemon Planter, Sora Mayura Yukino, Displacer Cat She, Zydax, Gabriel Shepherd, Harry 1863, Anthony Williams, Kay Burnett, Peter Allen, Merrill Douglas, Jordan S., Adam Glover, Wanna Trip Baby, Damian Lane, Carl Lilia, Righteous Steak, Thomas O'Neill, Joshua Smith, Jenny Size, Matthew, and Evan Haggart. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you'd like to access behind-the-scenes content and the ability to influence our future projects, please consider joining our Patreon or supporting us directly by going to weredshedproductions.com to donate or buy our new merch. Portions of the materials are copyrights and trademarks of Paradox Interactive AB and White Wolf, and are used with permission. All rights reserved. For more information, please visit worldofdarkness.com.